I am Justin House. Today's date is January the 6th, a day that shall live in infamy. It's going to get Instagram going as well. Stand by. And I believe we're live. Kept my stealth, still as a statue. Anyway, welcome. I am Justin House. This is TrueHouse, episode 457. And today's date, January the 6th. I feel quite almost presidential uttering the slogan, a day that shall live in infamy. Those of you that obviously I suppose I can tie it in the January the 6th so-called insurrection. Yeah, I'm not even going to, but it just happens to be coincidentally the 6th of Jan. And the other immortalised speech was, of course, Theodore. Was it Theodore? Yes, Pearl Harbor, wasn't it? December 7th, whatever it was, 40, gosh. Oh, Justin, your history. Anyway, it's December 7th, I believe. You know, when Pearl Harbor happened and that the resultant Roosevelt speech about a day that shall live in infamy. Anyway, look, I'm going to go straight into this. I'll do it tomorrow night. The Djokovic thing. I'm personally a massive fan of tennis, but I'll speak about that tomorrow. You know, it's not a popularity contest. I think Novak is the in my opinion, for what it's worth, is the best tennis player ever. Certainly statistically, if you look at his age, Grand Slam success, it's not really an argument. I know there's obviously Nadal, Federer, etc., but I, you know, it's it anyway. Anyway, look, personally, I'm a Novak fan, and I just think again it's another example of natural immunity. I'll tie that into a Joss Ackland Lethal Weapon 2, diplomatic immunity, wasn't it? Yeah, with Patsy Kensit. Was that Lethal Weapon 2? Yeah, it was, yeah. Anyway, but natural immunity makes me think of diplomatic immunity with the South African contingency in Lethal Weapon 2 with a stunning Patsy Kensit. Anyway, using all that as to preface the subject tonight of racism, I'm quite happy to go there with a very black and white conversation on racism. Each of us, most people, most humans have what I'm going to call unconscious bias. We have unconscious biases and unconscious. Oh, good evening. We have unconscious bias and unconscious biases about many things in life. This is, you know, you can walk down the street, cross over the street. This is the classic argument. You know, single woman walking on her own sees a man of colour walking towards her on the street and crosses the road. Because of the unfortunate statistical truth that yes, a single white woman at night time statistically is more likely to be attacked and or raped by a black man. This is an uncomfortable statistic, and of course it opens up a can of worms about statistics. And I've just mentioned that with Djokovic, of course, talking about tennis statistics. But we are living in an age chock full of statistics, you know, whether you want to get into the COVID station. Again, I just call it that now, the COVID station, a convenient portmanteau of two words there. I'm certainly fatigued with that. I was talking about COVID again last night, so I'm going to give that a break tonight. But yeah, let's go there with racism. Whether you're an employer or an employee, whether you've been at the receiving end or the dishing out, you know, whether you're the giver or the receiver, We all do it. We've all done it. We've all look. Let me give you a real anecdote. You know, again on this live stream, I often share real life anecdotes, and you can say, well, you know, how analogous is your analogy, and how evidentiary, you know, is your anecdote to real life, and we know that in uh, the arena of collecting data, how we're not supposed to include our lived experiences and our real world true life anecdotes. But when I left this small town I'm currently in now, my hometown here in Bournemouth, Dorset, on the south coast of the UK, it's a what you could commonly call a you know a provincial, some might say, you know, parochial town. It's a small town. You know, it's not a cosmopolitan London. It's not a big bustling, bright lights, big city place. And being raised for the first 2 decades of my life, 22 when I left, 23, you know, I rarely saw black people, and I would argue still, coming back to this part of the UK now, I've been back about 4 years, and it is my hometown, and I, you know, I turned 50 in 12 days, for goodness sake, but there's still no black community here. I defy anyone, you know, living here. I don't care how politically correct you want to be or how woke you want to be, but the reality is there's no black community here in Bournemouth. Whereas somewhere like Croydon, where I lived for 7 years, there is. And let me be very clear. When I moved to Croydon, I moved to Croydon in 2008, 2009. Yeah, 2009, 2000, early 2009, I moved to Croydon. That's right. And spent 7 years there, and very, very quickly, if we're talking if we're talking demographic, and you know the reality of how the distribution of, you know, Caucasian Anglo-Saxons like me, air quotes, traditional British people, versus people of colour, I was in the extreme minority. So much so that I would say out of every 10 people, I was that 0.5%. You know, in terms of, yeah, if there were 10 humans, let me be very, very basic. If there were 10 humans walking down the street in the area of Croydon I lived in, I would be that half a person or one person that would be, you know, white. Never bothered me necessarily. So, good evening, someone there. So yeah, you know, it's a subject that I'm certainly very comfortable to talk about. It's geographically based. This depends in large part on where you live, how long you've lived there for. Also, don't forget, guys, you know, I'm going to be a bit rhetorical here. We are living in a time, certainly generationally, if we look at, you know, a generational span, you know, quarter of a century, 24, 25 years, that each generation is, me being a Gen Xer, you must be aware. If you're not aware, you should be aware. And then this is not just my opinion. This is pretty objective. The current generation, the young people now, you know, 20 somethings, let me just say that, whatever they are now, we've gone past Gen Z, we're now Alpha, whatever, I don't know, whatever. People born after 95, let's say that, shall we? Yeah, people born between sort of 97 and 2000, you know, that are now 23, 25, around there. They have the opinion that they're experiencing, you know, a very tough time in history. I'm not mocking them, but I'm having a friendly joke at their expense. When you speak to many 20-somethings, and I'm specifically talking about 20-year-olds and 22-year-olds and 18-year-olds now, that they feel oppressed and suppressed and hard done by, and you know, there's a lot of what I would politely call oppression Olympics, really, you know, and victim mentality, you know, how they're very hard done by. And I think each generation it gets easier. If we're talking about world hunger, poverty, out and out war, out and out death and wanton destruction, famine, disease, not even being able to hydrate yourself. You've got to remember, we here in the West, and this is completely related to culture, society, race. Is it typically endemic of a community, a culture that might have a higher crime area? Did they have a higher crime area and then a certain race moved in? Or is chicken and egg conversation? And I'm eggshelling that a little bit because you could say, well, this area is a high crime rate because of that race, or you could say, you know, but this swings and roundabouts. There are plenty of places in the UK, certainly places that I've lived in, where there are very high crime areas of people with my skin pigmentation. It's it's a cringe-worthy argument to talk about skin pigmentation being a direct it's like cause correlation effect between the community's general color, slash race, income, and then we're into the whole preposterous equality versus equity. And we all know by now that opportunity, having equal opportunity should not equal the outcome. What an absurd clown world we would live in if equal opportunity equated to equality of outcome, i.e., someone that studied for 10 years at medical school would have the same outcome as someone that had not. That's my point. So I do believe in meritocracy, irrespective of colour. I do believe in meritocracy, irrespective of your race, religion, where you've been raised, how you've been raised, and in what economic environment. I've known people in London that have come from extremely difficult backgrounds that have strived and worked their arse off to achieve extremely high standards of living through grafting for 12, 14, 16 years and just physically working and studying hard to get somewhere in life. And what I personally don't agree with is people having an equal outcome as those people that have tried and they themselves haven't. So it's almost like I am parroting Jordan Peterson in this regard. In this specific instance, I'm parroting Jordan Peterson, and many other people in this strata, this sphere, where people, certainly of my generation and older, say, well, no, you know, equal opportunities should not equal the same outcome. That being said, we know there is a muddying of the waters between equality and equity. Politically speaking, the messaging these days from a certain political side of the aisle is that we're striving for a state of equity in society. And again, to use my previous point, that's not actually possible. We know that the DIE principle, diversity, inclusion and equity, DIE, is frankly bonkers. I personally prefer meritocracy and actual equality and fairness. Make of that your own acronym, whatever you like. So yeah, what could I make that into? I could make it FEM versus DIE. There you go. If we're going to play acronyms, my FEM, which is fairness, equality, and meritocracy, beats DIE, which is diversity, inclusion, and equity. Like I say, equality isn't equity. Understand that. And inclusion and diversity. Again, these are all terribly sort of topically trendy things to talk about. So it's all tied in with race. And I think that if we're going to talk a little bit tonight, I'll only go on for about 20 minutes or so about racism. No, I don't think it's systemic. I think we shouldn't fall back to lazy arguments. In my opinion, I'm only giving you my opinion. I feel strongly that that's why I mentioned at the beginning of this. Typically, TrueHouse, talking head monologue tonight. That you can't objectively, with in good faith and clear conscience, present certainly a dialogue and say to people, oh yes, what terrible systemic racism we are suffering from. No, because that's why I mentioned the generations. We are so civilized. I would almost argue that we've become overly civilized. At the risk of sounding old-fashioned, and I probably am a bit old-fashioned, that I think the here's another word, privilege. I think there's so much privilege. I think there's so much ease of living, that we are lacking in stoicism. There's less people who are truly stoical. That's not to say that we should go back to sending 17-year-olds and shouting in foreign fields, "Fix bayonets," as young men. And yes, they were young men. Between 17 and 19 had to literally go over the top. That's what the expression "over the top" from whence it came, when men dug down in you know in ditches, in the trenches, literally had to be sent over the top to their imminent, impending, almost guaranteed deaths. I'm a fan of Dan Carlin's Hardcore Histories. For those of you that want a very quick, short, sharp shock education that you'd like to listen to, whether you're on Google Podcasts or Apple or whatever casting app you use to listen to the thing. I use Audible. I use, oh gosh, what do I use? Cast. Well, where do I keep Dan Carlin? I should share this with you actually, because it's relevant. Pocket Casts I use. And just to show you a few, and they're not actually fully loading up, but that's just some of my. There's Dan Carlin's Hardcore History there. The reason I mention that is because Dan Carlin, who's, he claims to not be a historian, but by God he is. He gives an incredibly lucid, eloquent appraisal, for hours at a time about events in history. Whether it's the Third Reich and the rise of, the rise of the Nazis and the Third Reich, or going before that, Genghis Khan, so on and so forth, and the First World War and the Second World War, and you listen to that shit and you think, oh my God, we really are all privileged here. To reinforce my earlier point about how, air quotes, young people who talk about how oppressed they feel, they're often posting their oppression from £1,000 smart slab. Now, before anyone jumps on me too quickly for that, I'm the first to admit that I'm a smart slab junkie, and by smart slabs I'm referring to smartphones. I'm pretty outspoken on the smartphone topic, insofar as I don't consider them to be phones anymore. I prefer to refer to them as smart slabs because obviously they're pocket rocket computers, and I'm a double Android and Apple person. So the reason I mention this is because the people that are squeaking, shouting loudest about how hard done by they are often young people between 18 and 25, doing it from a paid for education, driving a very nice car on a very new £1,000 smartphone. And if those, if you've got even 20 to 30% of what I've just outlined, you're at university, someone's floating your fees, someone's giving you a nice car to drive, namely parents, you're living in a good address in a nice area, and you're on a new iPhone, but you still feel the need to talk about how oppressed you are, you're not, you're deluded, and you need to look at older generations who have gone through greater hardship and therefore are more stoic and better qualified to talk about real oppression. Yeah, and the reason I mention that is because it's completely relevant to race, geography, demographic, etc. The list goes on. So, I can't sit here and talk about racism without mentioning generational differences. I would be grossly misleading the conversation, the dialogue. Anyone remotely involved in this conversation, listening or watching, excuse me, I'm doing you a disservice if I mention the subject of racism without talking about our generations. The mere fact that the modern, using modernity as a framework, it all becomes, I think, doubly ironic to the point where a guy like me of my age, will openly take the piss a little bit because, we are super civilized here in the West. We are exceedingly lucky, and like I say, to reinforce that talking point, if you're texting from a brand new phone with a brand new car in a nice university about how hard done by you are, you ain't. So we are now at a very funny fulcrum point, where the messaging, certainly online, certainly, our dependency on these things, and depending on here we go. This is what I was trying to point out to you. Look, I use Pocket Casts, and this just to quickly share with you all who I use, or should I say, my homework. So I'll just hold that, and I'll show YouTube first. So that's probably enough there on YouTube, and that's to Instagram as well. Okay, so it's a pretty eclectic mix, from Jocko to Joe, Lex Fridman, Michael Malice, Dan Carlin, Tim Dillon, obviously Eric and Brett Weinstein, Brendan O'Neill, Russell Brand, Rhonda Patrick, Sam Harris, Tim Dillon, Rich Roll, Jocko twice, Breaking Points, even Crowder, Tim Pool, Brendan Sharp, and some what I call guilty pleasures for me there. A bodybuilding podcast, and then into my tech like Renee Ritchie and Lua Unbox Therapy, and of course MKBHD. All these people are tech tubers, hugely into the aforementioned smart slabs, these things. And the reason I like that eclectic mix is because it's certainly, in terms of this discussion, it's very educational listening to someone like Dan Carlin, because you can't talk about this without mentioning history. So to hear in this, to call it a modern condition, using modernity as framework, to say, oh, look at this systemic racism, straight away you're on quicksand. It's not even a valid argument. I defy anyone in the UK, in the US, to look anyone across, any across table or through the screen. You don't need to get political, you don't need to get irate about it, but you can't, in clear conscience, in good faith, with a straight face, present the argument of systemic racism, because that's why I mention the generations, because those days are frankly bloody gone. Okay, this is why personally I pissed my pants when I saw Colin Kaepernick, his recent Netflix special. Of course he got funding for it because it's political, and it's Colin Kaepernick. There's a guy who hasn't experienced racism like he claims to, and many people have come forward. People that, fellow coloured people have come forward, people that have known Kaepernick for decades. He didn't have the upbringing that he claims. It's completely hyperbolic. And you can't compare, National Football League. If you've seen it, do watch Colin Kaepernick's Black and White just for the comedic value, because he is taking modernity, the NFL, and comparing it. He's trying to correlate it to the slave trade. You can't, because the slave trade was not optional. Going back to enough years to talk about the slave trade with a straight face, those people, cotton pickers, and which that's where the word cracker came from, because of the crack of the whip. You can't, in good faith, present that argument and say, oh yeah, modern NFL players being measured for their stats, whatever their athletic ability is, and how genetically predisposed they are to play ball. If you're 5'10", you're not going to be a great NBA player, are you? But if you're 6'10", 7'4", then you are. So, does that make me a height supremacist? Do you see what I'm saying? If a film requires someone to play the role of Donald Trump, would you cast for a black person? No. Does that make the casting director racist? If you were making a film about the life of Barack Obama, would you cast for a white person? What, and then put them in blackface? No. Does that make that casting director racist? Do you see my point? If you were making a film about, again, I could go on, but where the racism conversation has become retarded, and I use the word correctly. Again, you're not supposed to say that word. No, you can't use the word retarded. Well, I'm going to use the word retarded because you're retarding a conversation. It's retardation. It's backward thinking. It's backward logic, and it's slowing down genuine progress of having a civilized conversation. And the civilized conversation, for it to be above board, clear conscience, good faith, should be two people saying, okay, number one, can we establish some ground rules? And the ground rules should be, do we agree in 2022 that systemic racism is a thing? No, certainly not here in the West. And that's why I mentioned my white privilege, that being born in a town like this, and I left this town when I was 23. I went away for 23 years, came back when I was 46, 23 and 23, do the math. All right, so my first 23 years in a predominantly white town in the south part of the UK, coastal beach town. I then go away for 23 years. I came back when I was 46, which was 4 years ago, and I'm turning 50 in 12 days' time. Do the math. This is my chronological timeline for me. And the town has still got bugger all black people in it. Okay, so when I lived in Los Angeles, when I lived in London, when I lived in Essex, when I lived in Croydon, I was around a far more eclectic mix of skin pigmentation, okay? Different cultures, different walks of life, different accents, different races, different ethnic backgrounds, religion. So that's why I mentioned my 7 years in Croydon. A white bloke like me living in Croydon, of course I was the minority, the extreme minority. Like I say, I was the 1 or half out of 10. Did I feel oppressed? Did I feel scared? Did I feel, oh my God, I can't function here? Well, no, I stayed for 7 years, so I can't have been that upset. The gym I worked at, obviously I'm long retired now. I retired in 2016, but the point I'm making is, I functioned completely normally. I never felt, essentially compromised or fearful. So, look, that's just my anecdotal experience. That's all I'm saying. What frankly grips my shit, for want of a better expression, is how people straw man, we've got steel man, straw man, gaslighting. Um, People straw man this and they present a side of the argument that I think is based on quicksand. I think the very foundations of the argument that we've got systemic racism, whether you want to talk about cops in America or whatever, if you look at the statistics, these arguments are not borne out. Okay? If you look at the modernity of life now, we're not in a slave trade. Sorry, Colin Kaepernick, but we're not. Do you see this? So, if I'm to put my cynical head on, tonight's subject of racism and how racist are we, in my personal opinion, not very. Okay, of course there are corners of the world, there are parts of the world that are not as civilized as us. To be specific, to galvanize what I'm saying, us as in the UK and the US, the modernity, the excess, the abundance of the West. Okay, if you've got to walk 10, let me be very hyperbolic myself, okay? Let me be melodramatic to highlight my point. If you live in a geographical location, demographically in a as Rogan would say, on a patch of dirt in a corner of the world where you've got to walk 10 miles each way or more to get clean water that you wash, bathe, and drink, then you're not living in abundance. So the mere fact at the beginning of COVID 2 bloody years ago, when indulgent imbeciles, I mean, it is the height of imbecilic behaviour, started to overreact and knee-jerk by running to supermarkets and stripping it of toilet paper. This is demonstrably showing how privileged we are, okay? Sorry, not sorry for the rant, okay? But again, this is related to culture, generation, race, economy, equality versus equity. Remember what I said. Equality of opportunity, what's available to you, should not, let me repeat, should not equate to equality of outcome. If it did, our society as we know it would go to shit, and the things that we all like our smart slabs, would go very quickly. And who makes these, by the way? I'm hypocritical. I'm talking to an iPhone here, another Android there, and here's a Goog. We know where these things are put together. We know where the lithium, whether the minerals, the ore, O-R-E, the minerals and the lithium is mined from, and who gets those things that the likes of Tim Cook, Mr. Good Morning at Apple, then says, here's next year's iPhone 14. This year's iPhone 14 obviously coming. We're 30 days away from the S22 Ultra, of course. These remarkable smart slabs that I'm a complete, addict for, I'm the first one to say, yeah, I enjoy them, you might enjoy them too. But look at from whence they came, Anyway, there's a rabbit hole I can go into. That's 34 minutes so far. But going back to the kickoff point of tonight, looking at I was prompted to mention this tonight, based on an argument I saw online a couple of days ago. It's a good debate actually, and it was a panel. If you watch those panels, we've got talking heads like 4 there and 4 there, and it's not like 8 or 10 people, and actually it's about 8 people. But the point being, they were talking about this, and of course there are some uncomfortable truths. There are inconvenient truths. You could go to certain parts of the UK and certain parts of the US, and you could find people looking like me that are racist bastards. You can, all right? Adversely, you can go to certain parts of the UK and certain parts of the US and find people that are black that absolutely despise people like me, okay? But neither of those things are systemic racism. They're not. You could have a black employer that looks at a job application, sees the name John Smith, okay, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of a redneck name. Oh, I don't know. You what's it? What's the classic redneck name? Udus or what? I don't know what it's called, but you could strike off, you know, what we in the UK would call someone that's a bit chavvy, and what my US friends might call, you know, someone that's a bit of a redneck. Coin flip. You could have someone that's white. They could be a white employer, and they could look at, you know, trying to think of a typical black name actually. Um, you know, I don't know, some Yashana, Rashana, whatever, you know, one of those, you know, again, oh, Justin, you racist, you know, a typical black girl name, and look at it and go, no, I'm not going to look at the actual application. So, yes, one of the topics on this discussion that I will mention was how prospective employers, or should I say potential employers, sorry, looking at a prospective employee would look at their application and literally file it under B1N, bin, on the basis of the applicant's name. Because you can often spot a person's ethnicity by their name. Okay, so these are obvious examples of, you know, air quotes, enacting racism. The other one would be, gosh, I remember at the beginning of a film I like with Sandra Bullock called Crash. Very good film, probably 15 years old now. Very good cast, very cast, American and English cast. It's one of those films where you've got 3 or 5 good sort of stories intertwined. You know, it's quite sort of threaded. And the opening scene opens in what is clearly 3rd Street in Santa Monica, a place that I used to frequent, a place that I'm very familiar with. And whenever it's on film, I recognise it. It's Brendan Fraser and Sandra Bullock walking down. God, I miss it. Oh my God, I miss it. Walking down 3rd Street Prom in Santa Monica, and they see a couple of black fellas. Oh God, I'm forgetting the name of the actor. He's also in the Fast and Furious franchise. Oh God, it's one name. Ludicrous. Anyway, he's playing, you know, a, you know, sort of a gangbanger role, and you see Sandra Bullock kind of tug on the shirt sleeve, you know, the jacket, the suit jacket sleeve of her politician husband, played by Brendan, wearing a wig, Fraser. And again, it's demonstrably showing how you know, a couple of wealthy white folk see 2, you know, air quotes, gangbangers and go, oh, let's cross the street. You know what I mean? So that's to go back to retread my own footsteps with how I started tonight's stream by saying, are you enacting racism if you're a white lady, attractive, single, 30, walking down the street at night, and you see a black bloke walking towards you, you shit your pants and cross the road? There you go. Is that racism, or is that someone that has a knee-jerk reaction and thinks, oh, it's dark, it's a bloke, and would also cross the road if that person was white? Or are they doing it based on skin colour? So you see the layers of the argument. And I'll tell you what, because I'm approaching 40 minutes, and I'm endeavouring to make these streams now about 3/4 of an hour and no more. Unless, of course, people, you know, start to chime in, and of course I'll talk to you for longer. But if it's me doing what I'm doing now, which is the classic Justin talking head monologue, I'm going to finish this, because otherwise I'm going to flog a dead horse. When society is at the fulcrum point that it clearly is, if we have the luxury of arguing the toss about does it exist, it probably doesn't. It probably doesn't. Okay, to be clear, if we're talking about excess and abundance, because it's related to ethnicity and race. There are parts of the globe, okay, parts of Africa, what we call 3rd world countries, where literally poor people have to walk double figures, what we would call a marathon, 12 miles that way, 12 miles back, to come back with, a head bucket, a head bowl full of water. Okay, that's, or to go to a dirty well that animals have defecated in. Make no mistake, be under no illusion. Okay, this could be Aleppo, this could be anywhere, parts of Africa that are war torn and destroyed, Syria, whatever, where people, we've not got a clue. Okay, we go to the supermarket. The mere fact, guys and girls, that bottled water exists is excessive. It demonstrates abundance, okay? The fact that we can go to a gas station, a petrol station, and choose from carbonated or still bottled glass or plastic water, okay? From whatever spring in whatever mountain, is a demonstration of modernity, of abundance. So, I think most of us having this conversation shouldn't be. I think when I see people online saying, oh, systemic racism, when I hear political talking points about, air quotes, systemic racism, the cops this, the cops that, the people this, Black Lives Matter, etc., etc., I think all of you, all of us, are living in a literal dream world. Because there are places on this planet that are seriously undernourished when it comes to real equality, real fairness, and real meritocracy. And to finish this, to galvanise my previous talking points, I'll pick, if we're playing the acronym bloody game, I'll pick FEM, which is fairness, equality, and meritocracy, over DIE, DIE, diversity, inclusion, equity, any day of the week, because equality is not equity. Fairness isn't inclusion. Diversity isn't meritocracy. And let me be very clear on that last point. If you're hiring to sort of link this up, to loop back to the whole thing about employer-employee, and how people based on their name, the presumption being that could be a white or a black person, I won't hire them. If we, as a society, the highest echelons of society and the corridors of power, political power, all the way down to a ching-ching cashier, your local co-op, or a road sweeper, I'm not taking the piss out of menial jobs, but I'm just saying, it could be POTUS, presidential versus someone picking up litter, all the way, the entire spectrum. If we hire people based on skin colour, if we hire people based on identity over merit, again, I'm going to finish now, but if there's one hill personally I'll die on, I don't give a stuff about someone's skin pigmentation. If they're white-skinned like me, light-skinned Caucasian Anglo-Saxon like my ugly mug, or if they're midnight black, I don't care. I care how adept is that person at the job, how suited are they at the job, whether it's through previous experience and they've legitimately earned it through their meritocracy, and it's a well-earned, fought-for position. Hello, mate. Different funding of public schools. I'll finish on that note. It has to be based on meritocracy over identity. And probably one of the most preposterous examples of this publicly is Kamala Harris. We know, no worries, I'll talk about it. We know Kamala Harris is completely inept at her job. I mean, she's an absolute stinker. And I'd say that if she was bright white or she's black, I don't care. But they put her in that position because she's a woman and a woman of colour. Okay? I mean, look, so I've just bashed my own microphone, but it's like the, oh God, I'm blanking on the term. Oh God, what do the schools use? I know how obviously if we're looking at code writers and mathematicians and how fantastically bright my Asian friends are. Oh God, I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of the what schools and colleges and unis do. That's going to infuriate shit out of me. Oh God, the government scheme where that's going to really piss me off. The government scheme that gives grants to certain people and doesn't include others and prioritizes. Oh fuck! Sorry, I'm so pissed off. I'm so pissed off when I forget the name of something so patently obvious. God, that's really. I mustn't get. I'll get hung up on it, but it'll come to me. It'll come to me. The very obvious government scheme that's been going on for decades now, whereby governments cover the cost of education for people of certain. Oh fuck! I recently saw a Princeton, Stanford, Harvard, Cambridge, Oxford version of this, and it demonstrably showed how people of certain ethnicities. So here in the UK, people in Indians, Pakistanis and Indians do exceedingly well with tech. Anyway, it's going to really piss me off. To answer your question about demographic, what was it? School funding. I never know what IDK means. God, I don't know what IDK means. You have to tell me what IDK means. I don't know what IDK means. But I don't know how the system works in America. I've got no knowledge of American. Obviously, here we have state schools, state-run schools, and private schools, which would segue a person to they would earn a degree. They would go from general secondary education to advanced to getting a university program. Oh God, and that's the very term I'm looking for. Oh God, that's going to really piss me off. That's going to really. It's been going on for ages. It's been going on since I was a kid. Since I was someone tell me, someone please tell me what it's called when people get a grant based on their colour, based on their skin colour, and yet that they might go to university and massively flunk. God, that's going to really bother me now. Anyway, I do apologise. I'm forgetting something so simple, and I've been steaming along this live stream. Shit. If you know it, let me know. Let me know, because I've completely blanked on that. That's really pissed me off. Such a shame. I was so pleased with this stream. I was so pleased with the direction this stream was going in, because I didn't dry up anywhere. I don't work from scripts. I've got nothing in front of me. I freewheel the entire thing. I've got no bullet points, no talking points, nothing. My iPad's shut down. I've got no paperwork. I just do this always top of my head. And I can't believe I'm forgetting something so fundamental to my argument. I do apologise. You know it because it's an American scheme. It's not a UK scheme. We don't have it here. We don't have it here. It's the basic government-funded scheme whereby students could be 16, 17, 18, and they are awarded funding, and they are placed in institutions. They would go from high school, I would imagine in America, high school onto college or uni, and that would be financed, or their positions would be, they'd be allocated positions based on, oh, let's get these black children into this uni, and then people like Harvard or Stanford, Princeton would say, yeah, look at our figures. We've got X amount of coloured people in. Aren't we cool? Aren't we using the DIE principle? To quote Gad Saad, diversity, inclusion, equity. And I prefer fairness, equality, meritocracy. God, what is it? What is it, dude? Shit, it's such an obvious name. Well, the American schools run it for decades. Damn it. Damn it, that completely collapses what I'm trying to say. Because we have state-funded schools, and you see, there are two areas that the UK, because I'm such a fanboy of America, and all I ever wanted was to live permanently in America, and I only managed 3.5 years. You know, there are two zones in the UK where we do exceedingly well, and you're never going to catch me slagging off the NHS, the National Health Service, because I'd be dead. I've been very, very open about this. I would have died multiple times if it hadn't been for our National Health Service, and to this day, all my medication is paid for. The hundreds of thousands that my dialysis cost for 4.5 years. To be very clear, when I had my kidney transplant, I was given, I'm deadly serious, our Daily Mail newspaper did an article on me, for God's sake. I was given £980,000 worth of an experimental American drug called eculizumab, trade name Soliris, and I was given that for my transplant to work, because I'd been infected with human leukocyte antigens from multiple blood transfusions. Such was the degree of my blood loss with my spine tumour, because the surgery was 17 hours. And the blood loss I sustained was so significant that I had so many transfusions. I contracted HLA antibodies. They only test for Hep C and HIV. And subsequently, it meant that no transplant would work in me, not my brother's, not a cadaver's, no one's. And I was given an experimental drug called eculizumab, which is a failed drug. 80 of us were given it, 70 of us died. I'm one of a group of 10 survivors out of a small trial here in the UK of 80. So that drug failed, that cost £980,000 over a 12-week period, and that was gifted to me on the NHS, as was, all my surgeries and my dialysis and my lifetime's worth of drugs. So what I'm saying is, I couldn't have any of this stuff. I've got two friends in America on dialysis. One is on dialysis for good. Both American professional bodybuilders. Damn it. That's such a shame. I've forgotten that name of the scheme, the government scheme that funds American children in education. God, it's such a well-known name. It's such a well-known bloody name. Anyway, I'll stop it there. I'm sorry, Joey. I'm sorry, brother. I'm really sorry, because I could have, sewn that into your question and said, oh, that's related to what you're saying, because all I do know is that here people literally win positions. So, for example, as I left school, I was actually expelled, but my parents then paid for a private school for 4 years, And then in the last year of that school, I was asked to only attend the school on a Tuesday and Thursday, and I began working Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 15 to 16. And then obviously I never returned. I never went on to further education. That was me done. Oh, I almost had it then. It almost came back in my head. Oh, God. No, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's on the tip of my tongue. Shit. Oh, shit. That was on the tip of my tongue. I almost said it. Oh, God. I was going to blurt it out then. I almost had it. Your entire system in America is built on this. And the figures for 2019 and 2020 were really embarrassing because the Democrats were using it to talk about success, but the drop-off rate was ever so high. In other words, and this is politically a hot potato, very embarrassing, there were X amount of coloured students on campus who were failing their all the SATs. They were going to really swanky places, like Yale, Harvard, Stanford, etc., and they were not doing as well as the Asian students. The Chinese students, because that's such a broad, broad stroke statement. Oh, Asian students, we got Persian, Pakistani, Chinese, Indian, there's so many, but basically they're often very good at the sciences, at the tech. You'll see people that work for GOOGLE, people that work at Facebook, etc. They often don't look like me. They're often Asian kids, and their rates of acceptance at these elite American unis had been culled by the unis because, enter name, I've forgotten, the unis were using the colleges. Oh my God, Brett Weinstein spoke about this so much. Oh my God. Anyway, I'm going to lose the plot. That's nearly an hour. Time to go. Shit. Anyway, I don't want to ruin my stream because it's going to ruin it. I do apologise for blanking on a pivotal talking point, which would demonstrably prove what I'm trying to convey. And happy to finish with egg on my face, but just very frustrated because it's a fundamental factor in the manipulation of students, in attendance, that the colleges have gone, and the unis have gone, let's get this lot in, this minority group versus these students that academically got in on their own merit. And that's the flipping term I'm blanking on. Damn it. All right. I'm going to say goodnight to Instagram first. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow night. Same time, same place, same face. And good night to you, sir. All right. Thanks for joining me. Sorry I forgot the name. Damn it.